Hello, my name is Linnea from Linnea Loves Music, and today we're going to be answering your question, what makes a singer sound good? There are a number of things that help to make a singer sound good. The very first one is tuning. You might wonder, what is tuning? Tuning is, let's say, here's where your note, where you want it to be. You don't want to sing the note too high. If it's too high, it's sharp. If it's too low, it's flat. You want to hit right in the middle, exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're sharp, what do you do to fix it? You actually have too much breath. You're pushing too much breath through the vocal cords. You're getting too high and you're kind of wasting a little bit of your breath. One of the easiest and quickest ways that I've learned to correct that was actually a tip that I learned from one of my choir directors from forever ago. I remember the choir was slightly off tune, and I remember her telling us to adjust our posture in a very specific way. And I remember thinking, that is so weird. And then she had us sing it again, and it was instant. In that exact moment, everything went right on pitch. And I remember locking that away in my brain and being like, it's magic, it's the thing that fixes it all. So if you are sharp, you want to focus more of the weight on the heels of your feet. And you might wonder why in the world that would work. For instance, when I first heard it, I thought, you're crazy. How in the world can this work? But as you know from breathing, when we're breathing, we need space for our lungs to be able to expand. So if you've got more of the weight on the heels of your feet, you're going to actually be compressing how much air that breath can push through. And so it's going to automatically fix that problem. If you are flat, you want to focus more of the weight on the balls of your feet. If you focus more of the weight on the balls of your feet, it's going to open up your chest cavity and help you to get that little extra breath that you need to help you get a little bit higher. Another issue you might recognize with tuning is some people, they can hear whether it's sharp or flat, but they struggle with being able to keep that consistency going when they're holding onto a long note. What is probably happening is that you're running out of breath support. And if you're finding you're always running out of breath, then that's really something for a long-term solution you need to start working towards. I would have you breathe in for 4 counts. And then as you breathe out, you want to breathe out on a S like a snake sound. So I would continue to work on trying to increase how long you can take that S sound for as long as you can. And the longer you can develop it, the better your breath support will be. That takes us now to our third point, which is developing your vowels and your consonants. Each of those have a different value to them. When you sing a word, like if you were to sing happy, for instance, you are not going to want to sing on the H because that doesn't create any sound. That's not anything good. Or like on your P, there's nothing there. What you want to be extending for the longest period of time when you say the word happy is on the A, happy, happy, on the A and the E, or the Y, but the E sound. You want to be really working on your vowels to have a really pure sound. Now, what is the purpose of consonants? Because consonants also have a real purpose. If you aren't having really crisp and clear consonants, you will have a difficult time connecting your voice, because the vowels are what the sound kind of rings out from. The consonants is what causes your vocal folds or vocal cords to come together. And it also helps with compression so that you can really project your voice very far. Oftentimes people think that the way to create a really strong voice is to just like push through, but really it is about creating a really beautiful, clear, crystal clear, beautiful vowel sound and a very crisp, sharp, and to the point consonant, and that will help your voice to sound beautiful and project. The next thing that makes a singer sound good is working on your vocal tone, or sometimes this is called your vocal resonance. So this is the sound of your voice. The reason why this is important is that if you can have a sound that is too extreme one way, so let's say you have a very muddy sound and it's just stuck right there in your mouth,
or you have a very nasally sound and everything sounds just a little too bright and a little too whiny.
So you want to have a really balanced sound, nothing too deep, nothing too muddled, nothing too bright, just perfectly in the middle. Now, that's not to say that you can't have creative expression, because you totally can, where you, let's say, bend something and it's like nasal for a second and then you balance it out, and that's a more advanced technique. But really, you need to start from a place that you have complete and total control of the sound. A singer who really does this really well is Adele. She can take that sound wherever she wants it to go. She can start off and it's deep and thick and rich, and then she pops it up to the top, and then she brings it right down. It is thick and rich and beautiful, and she creates so much variety. In one word, she will go from chest up to head and back down again, and it's like crazy vocal gymnastics. So then that takes us down to a really strong vocal mix. So we have different types of voices that we can use in the body. If your sound is vibrating more in your chest, it's going to be chest voice. So you'll hear it'll be very thick and deep and rich. If it's more in your mouth, it'll be more muffled. If it's in your nasal passage right here, it'll be more bright and more whiny. The next point that really makes a really strong singer is a neutral larynx. Now, you might not be very familiar with where your larynx is. So if you aren't familiar with it, take your hand lightly on your neck, not too tightly. And I want you to swallow. And you'll feel that bump go down, and then it'll pull up. You'll also feel this too if you yawn. So yawn, goes down and goes back up. And that little place, as you go higher, the larynx, or basically where the vocal cords, that sound box is, will, as you go higher, it will naturally want to go up high, and as you go lower, it'll naturally want to go down low, which is a natural process. But where people end up oftentimes getting issues is that their larynx will overextend. So if they're getting really high, you might see them jutting out their chin, and you might see blood vessels popping out here, and it gets really tight and really high, and everything's like super strained. And you can tell when that's happening, people don't have a neutral larynx. It should be kind of moving up slightly, but more so staying in that kind of neutral zone. And that will help you to have a really relaxed tone as you go down. You can oftentimes find the opposite issue as you go down lower. So sometimes as people go down low, it really starts to sound like super deep and everything's like muffled, and you're singing as a girl and wondering why in the world you're starting to sound like a man. That is probably why. Another thing to really note with the neutral larynx is that oftentimes the larynx and the tongue are very well connected together. So if your tongue is too far back in your throat, oftentimes your larynx will also be low. Everything's interconnected in the body. So if your larynx is too low and it's getting too deep, your tongue will also kind of pull back to the back. So some vocal teachers will actually tell you when you're singing, bring your tongue to your teeth, bring your tongue to the teeth, bring your tongue to the teeth. And they aren't just asking you just simply bring your tongue to the teeth, but they're trying to get a specific reaction where the sound won't get too deep and muffled back here. And if you tend to bring your tongue more to the front, it'll help you as you go down lower to still be able to have a bright sound. It'll also help you with being able to enunciate your words really clearly. The next element that makes you a good singer is having a balance between having compression but not strain. The challenge that many singers have is that they want to have a really strong voice and they want it right now. And they end up pushing their voice too hard. And that's where you start to hear about issues where people start wrecking their vocal cords because they've been on tour for so long, and then they need vocal surgery and all those types of things because they're using their voice the wrong way. One of the pictures that I always have in my mind is I try to think of an image in my mind that will take me exactly where I want to be. So if I need to relax at that moment and everything in my brain's telling me you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, I try to think of an image. I like to think of a really peaceful waterfall in the middle of a forest. in a jungle. And let's just imagine there's not like poisonous snakes and things, just like peaceful, nothing dangerous. and I'm in that water, and maybe there's a little gentle pool of water at the bottom, and I just collapse into that water. I just fall back into it, and I just float as I hear the water trickling in the distance. Or maybe the very tail end of a day, and I'm so tired. I've had a really crazy busy day, and everything in my body just is begging to just flop onto that bed. And that's the image I have in my head. Whenever I think that note is too high, I take myself to that place. A place that I can very instantly just, every muscle just relaxes. And instead of then me straining and pushing for that note, I just go, it's gonna come. Every person, that image is going to be different for. Everybody has different things that make them relax. If you have a fear of water, the absolute probably worst thing that you could think of is floating in water. But everybody has that different place that is completely and utterly peaceful, that when you think about it in one split second, you can take every muscle that's tense in your body and just relax. Now, at the same point, you can have the opposite end, where some singers don't even have any compression. They're so afraid of like hurting their voice that their voice won't project. And compression, to create really good compression, we talked about this a little bit in our consonant section of the video too, is that when you're trying to create good compression, you want to focus on allowing those consonants, those T's, those D's, those B's, to help the vocal folds to come together to make contact. But at the same time, every muscle's relaxed and you just let the sound carry. Another thing that's a really good image is imagining as though, and you can turn off all the lights in your room if it feels like a little less weird, is imagining as though you're in a huge concert hall and you're trying to let your sound carry all the way to the back of the room. But of course you want to do this without yelling, without screaming, without strain. Relaxed, just projecting and soaring and floating through the air. The last tip that I would say kind of distinguishes and makes a singer sound good is their control of vibrato. And vibrato is generally just oscillating between two pitches. So you'll hear kind of this waviness in the sound. And if you hear opera, it'll be like really, really wide, like a ah, and you'll hear that kind of wave. But you'll hear this in absolutely every different style of music, vibrato. And it's not, they aren't all wide, and they aren't all the time. Like in classical, it's pretty much almost all the time. And it's almost always more wide. There are exceptions, but quite often that way. But with pop and rock and those types of things, you'll also have vibrato as well. But it's different. It's almost seen as like the jewelry. So let's say, here's a special note. I'm gonna put a little on there. And this is another special note, and I'm just gonna tack it onto that one. So it's kind of seen as the jewelry to the accessories of your voice. It also helps your sound to sound much thicker, and it also helps your voice to project a lot more because it gives it a bigger, bulkier sound. But it's not a bigger, bulkier sound that comes from pressure and pushing. It's a bigger, thicker sound that comes between that, moving between two pitches. In vibrato, we aren't necessarily looking for vibrato all the time. It's about having control. Really good singers can control when they have vibrato, when they don't have vibrato, how fast it's going to be. They have complete and total control as to what's happening with their vibrato. And that is really what distinguishes this, and all the tips mentioned in today's video are the things that distinguish what really makes a singer sound good. I really hope that you enjoyed today's lesson talking about what makes a singer sound good. If you have any other comments of things that you would like for me to go on more detail on, please make sure to leave a comment in the bottom. Or if you have any other thoughts where you go, oh, I think she forgot to mention this. This is another thing that makes a singer sound good. I would love to hear all your comments. Make sure you like and you subscribe, and check back here often for more piano and vocal tips for your musical adventure. Bye.